The wind howled through the barren landscape as I trudged forward, clutching my worn backpack tightly. The desolate planet was harsh and unforgiving. I had landed here by chance. My spacecraft needed repairs, and this remote rock was the closest habitable destination. Food was scarce. Resources were even scarcer. The air held a biting chill that cut through the thick fabric of my suit. I scanned the horizon for shelter or some sign of life. The thought of spending another night exposed to the elements made my pace quicken. I stumbled upon a ruined settlement as the faint light of the planet's twin suns began to dim. Crumbled buildings and twisted metal stood as a testament to whatever tragedy had unfolded here. As I moved cautiously through the wreckage, I noticed something unusual. A faint movement caught my eye near the remnants of what looked like a small marketplace. Approaching slowly, I saw her. She was hunched over a pile of debris. Her frame was frail. Her skin was a pale shade of blue with an almost translucent quality. Her eyes, large and filled with sorrow, glanced up at me for a brief moment before returning to the task at hand. She was digging, searching. Her movements were weak and desperate. She was clearly starving. My heart ached at the sight. I unzipped my backpack and pulled out one of the few remaining meal packs I had left. Approaching cautiously, I extended it toward her. She froze for a moment, staring at the offering. Slowly, she reached out with trembling hands. Her fingers were long and slender. Her touch was hesitant, as if she feared it might be a trick. As soon as she grasped the package, she clutched it tightly to her chest. Her eyes met mine again. This time they were brimming with tears. She attempted to open the package, but her weakened state made it difficult. I gestured for her to allow me to help. She hesitated, but eventually handed it back. I opened it carefully and handed it to her. Once more, the scent of the preserved meal seemed to awaken something primal within her. She devoured it with a hunger that was both heartbreaking and unsettling. She ate quickly, too quickly. I placed a hand on her shoulder, hoping to convey the need for her to slow down. She paused and nodded. She understood. When she finished the meal, her tears flowed freely. She tried to speak, but her voice was faint, and her words were incomprehensible to me. Still, her gratitude was evident. She placed a hand over her chest and bowed her head. I nodded in return, trying to reassure her that it was all right. As night fell, I realized I could not leave her here alone. Her condition was dire, and the cold would only worsen her state. I gestured for her to follow me. She hesitated, but eventually rose to her feet. Her movements were unsteady. I offered my arm for support, and she leaned against me. Together, we made our way back to the shelter I had set up earlier. The small structure was basic, a makeshift tent constructed from the remnants of my ship's emergency supplies. It provided enough insulation to keep the worst of the cold at bay. I helped her inside and offered her a thermal blanket. She accepted it gratefully, wrapping it around her fragile form. Her eyes watched me cautiously as I rummaged through my supplies for another meal pack. I handed it to her, but gestured for her to save it for later. She nodded and set it aside. The silence between us was heavy, yet not uncomfortable. She seemed to relax slightly as the warmth of the tent began to seep into her. I could see the exhaustion etched into her features. Her eyelids grew heavy. Within moments, she succumbed to sleep. I watched her for a while, ensuring she was truly resting. Then I settled into my own corner of the tent. Sleep did not come easily for me. My mind was consumed with questions about who she was, what had happened to her people, what tragedy had left her in this state. The next morning I woke to find her sitting up. She was studying me intently. Her expression was calmer now. There was a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes. I offered her a small smile before preparing a basic breakfast. She ate slowly, this time savoring each bite. Afterward, she pointed toward the settlement ruins. I nodded, understanding that she wanted to return. We spent the day exploring the ruins together. She led me to a building that appeared to have been a communal space. Inside, we found remnants of what looked like storage containers. Most were empty, but a few still held items of interest. She retrieved a small device and held it close to her chest. It appeared to be of significant importance to her. I did not press for an explanation. I simply offered my assistance as we continued searching the area. So over the next several days, we developed a tentative bond. Though we could not communicate verbally, our actions spoke volumes. I shared my food and resources. She guided me through the ruins, revealing hidden caches and safer paths. Slowly, her strength began to return. Her movements grew steadier. Her eyes lost some of their sorrow. One evening, as we sat by a small fire, she surprised me. She held out the device she had found earlier and activated it. A holographic projection flickered to life. It displayed images of her people. They were vibrant and full of life. The contrast between those images and her current state was stark. She pointed to herself in one of the images, then gestured to the ruins around us. It was clear now. This place had been her home. Her people were gone. She was the last. The weight of her loss was immense. I placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what little comfort I could. She leaned into the gesture, her eyes filled with tears once more. That night, she spoke a single word. I did not understand its meaning, but the way she said it carried a depth of emotion that transcended language. As the days turned into weeks, we continued to work together. She taught me about her world through gestures and demonstrations. I shared stories of my travels using drawings and simple explanations. We became partners in survival. Slowly, the ruins that once seemed lifeless began to hold a sense of purpose. Together, we found ways to make use of the remaining resources. One day, as we ventured further than usual, we stumbled upon an intact structure. Inside, we discovered a functioning terminal. She approached it with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Her fingers danced across the interface. The screen came to life, displaying streams of data. Her expression shifted from hope to determination. She turned to me and gestured for me to follow. The terminal had provided coordinates. We gathered what supplies we could carry and set out toward the location. The journey was long and fraught with challenges, but her resolve never wavered. Her strength had returned in full. She was no longer the frail being I had first encountered. When we arrived at the coordinates, we found an underground facility. It was a haven untouched by the destruction. Above, inside, we discovered preserved food supplies, advanced medical equipment, and even a functioning power source. It was a lifeline. For her, it was a chance to rebuild. For me, it was a reminder of the resilience of life. As we settled into the facility, she began to teach me her language. It was complex but beautiful. Through our lessons, I learned her name, Ilara. She learned mine as well. We communicated more easily now, sharing stories and ideas. Together, we began to plan for the future. Months passed, and the barren planet that once seemed devoid of hope began to transform. Ilara's determination was infectious. She worked tirelessly to restore her people's legacy. I supported her in every way I could. Our bond grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, as we stood beneath the twin suns, she turned to me and spoke words that needed no translation. Her gratitude was profound. Her strength was inspiring. In that moment, I realized that I had not only saved her life, she had saved mine as well. The facility became a beacon. Over time, we managed to send out signals. Other travelers passing through this sector began to respond. Some brought supplies, others brought knowledge. Slowly, a community began to form. Ilara became a leader among them. Her wisdom and resilience earned their respect. She shared her culture with them, ensuring that the legacy of her people would not be forgotten. Years passed. The once barren planet blossomed into a thriving hub of life. Ilara and I stood together watching as children of various species played in the fields that now surrounded the settlement. The ruins that had once symbolized despair had been transformed into monuments of hope and remembrance. Ilara turned to me with a smile. In her eyes, I saw the same determination that had driven her from the day we met. She spoke softly. Her words were a reminder that even in the darkest moments, compassion could ignite a spark that would light the way forward. As the twin suns set, casting a golden glow over the horizon, I knew that our story was only the beginning. Together we had built something lasting, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the unyielding will to survive. And as the stars began to fill the sky, we stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.